Ready to go?
Okay. Resolved that we should welcome death. Death, a permanent cessation of all the vital functions, the end of life. Vital functions, concerned with or necessary to the maintenance of life. Welcome to accept with pleasure or cordiality. Death. When we think of death, we often relate it to sadness, grief, illness, and even darkness. Movies and literature have had an influential role in personifying death and portraying it as something evil, often seen as having a skull face, wearing a long black robe, holding a scythe, and usually moving very slow. This gloomy idea of death over the years has resulted in it being seen as taboo and an unacceptable dinner topic. However, why do we shy away from the inevitable? Something that is bound to happen and we have absolutely no control over. In the Apology by Plato, we are given the account of Socrates' trial and final statement once he has been found guilty and sentenced to death. Socrates states, "What has happened to me may well be a good thing, and those of us who believe death to be an evil are certainly mistaken. There is a good hope that death is a blessing." None of us are sure of exactly what one encounters when he passes away. Whether it is what our various cultures teach us of crossing over into a place of bliss, or if we must wait in purgatory and await judgment day, or if it is leaving this physical body to inhabit another, or if it is simply the end of our time as a whole and we no longer continue to exist physically or spiritually. Whatever my belief, your belief, or anyone else's, there is no need to be afraid, worried, sad, or anxious about death, as it will surely happen to all of us. Death anxiety is the apprehension people experience when they become aware of death. While most people may just simply avoid death, others experience anxiety just thinking about it. It has been found that individuals passed away due to panic attacks caused by death anxiety. Now, it would be remiss of me to try to persuade you all that we should welcome death without identifying the reasons in which one might surely say we shouldn't. Many people feel that just because it is bound to happen does not mean that they have to accept it. However, without accepting death, one may find themselves anxious and fearful of what the future holds. Holding on to that anxiousness creates a lifetime of unconscious and conscious thoughts of what ifs, what will happen, and am I ready? Living our lives always questioning the future prohibits us from enjoying the moment of the now. You might also consider the fact that you will be committing a detrimental harm to your family for your absence. However, welcoming death allows us to prepare for the day that we are no longer here. Discuss with family of future plans, arrangements, and for some, even allows them to create a new form of generational stability within the family of leaving behind valuable assets to their children and ensuring that their family will be taken care of once they have departed. When we are able to accept that various inevitably occurring events will take place in our lifetime, we tend to focus on what we can decide that happens in our lives and act upon those events more purposefully. For the Serenity Prayer states, "God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." Understanding that we are only granted this life temporarily, we should welcome death as a reminder and a reason to lead a meaningful and authentic life. For being afraid of death prohibits us from experiencing the present, for constantly focusing on the future. Therefore, instead of trying to hold on to life forever, embrace its impermanence. As Socrates expressed in The Trial and Death of Socrates, Death is the cure for the ills of life. Steve Jobs once said, "Death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it." Death is very likely the single best invention of life. It is life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. With all of this being said, live without the anxiety that fearing death brings. Turn the sadness and grief of losing a loved one into something meaningful and empowering. And be ready to leave when death comes stumbling in. For when you accept and welcome death, you have just started to live. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gibson. Ms. Harrelson?
Yes, I'm ready. We should not welcome death. The opposite of a welcome is a refusal, or in other words, rejection, non-acceptance. It was said, none of us are sure of exactly what one encounters when he passes on. But this being true, I must ask, why should one welcome something when it is unknown the possibilities of what it may bring? One has no way to know what it may cause to come to an untimely ending. Is it so wrong to refuse the warm welcome of death when we can still fight for our future and place within the present? Socrates indeed did state that there is good hope that death is a blessing. However, can one say that he was therefore running from the misfortunes of the present? Essentially, giving up. Giving up in hopes of his after being better than his before, his death being better than his life. Should this be an excuse to welcome the unknown of dying before it has been forced upon you? When we agree that one has no hardcore facts regarding what happens after death, we can also agree that one has the choice of hoping to see what will happen if they fight to stay alive each day. This is where the awareness of the possibility of death has likely arrived. However, the will to strive for the peace of life that one has left should overpower the temptation to succumb to death and let it entrap you when there is still time to spare in the here and now. What makes the what ifs of death more worthy and appealing than the what ifs of life? Thank you.
All right, we'll have a negative opening speaker, Ms. Berryhill.
Resolved that we should welcome death. Welcome to greet in a glad, polite, or friendly way. While it is indeed true that no one on earth knows what it is like beyond the life that we are living, that alone gives all the more reason for death to not be welcomed. Why is it deemed so peaceful? Why are we so comfortable with the thought of an afterlife and we don't even know what is there, or if one even exists? Death is very much inevitable, but in the same sense, so is fate. If it is in one's fate to cross paths with a rapist or a serial killer, there is no escaping it. It is bound to happen. It is destined. But that doesn't mean I will welcome one of them to my front door. Because you know you could die, you should live each day like it could be your last, but not like you want it to be. It is not only reckless for you, but for anyone you may encounter, collectively. To say that we should welcome death brings light to the assumption that the human race is on one accord. True enough, death should not be feared, but welcomed is the last word that should be used. When welcoming death, whose are we greeting and who is it in the hands of? For many crimes, whether racial or blamed on mental illness, it had to be assumed by the suspect of the crime that death was okay with the victim, that the suspect's theory was either more powerful or in compliance with those around them. It is hard to say we in a society of so many different people. Looking at the man who lived underground by our right, the cop shot and killed Mr. Daniels, and all he wanted to do was share his new truth. I don't think he was ready to die. He was just beginning to live. In the words of the officer, though, you've got to shoot his kind. they wreck things. Who was the officer to write this narrative for him? What gave him the authority to decide the man's calling? When Socrates said, "There is no need to be afraid, worried, sad, or anxious about death, as it will surely happen to all of us," how do you explain that to a child who has not even gotten to live yet? Do we ignore the many innocent children under 10 and the fact that the last thing they see before taking their last breath is the barrel of a firearm? Everyone is not able to drink a deadly mix and have time to prepare. Some people are wrongfully accused of crimes and sentenced to death in prison and have done no teachings, have left no impact. Should it be welcomed then? What do we say about the people who have not yet fulfilled their desires on earth? We also can't forget about the people who commit such vicious crimes, the ones who get joy out of the negatives of life, welcoming their own death. If you indeed believe in heaven or hell, people who enjoy negative things and never ask for forgiveness only have one place with their name on it. Death is not only dying, but it is what could happen afterwards. Welcoming death once again gives the illusion that we are all positive on this earth. We should be, but that is impossible. It is the same way with just and unjust laws. In the perfect world, there will be no room for injustice or the battle for justice. But in reality, there has been a fight for true civil rights for hundreds of years. Overall, when deciding to welcome death, it is a hard call to make. It could mean that either party is calling the shots, and that makes it all too risky. Everyone who dies is not old and or ready, and not everyone who leaves this earth is a believer. Death should be something that everyone is aware of, but welcomed is an overstatement. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Clark will be our affirmative rebuttal.
As the negative, you were in a position to tell us all the reasons why one should not welcome death. Yes, in the words of Credo, this would deprive us from family and a good friend if we welcome death in. Furthermore, not an observation that death is a blessing reflecting that one has lived their life. In the words of the affirmative opening speaker, death is a destination that we all share and no one has or ever will escape it. In the words of Socrates, it would not be fitting at my age to resent the fact that I must die now, indicating that death may be for the best. They do say that we rest in peace, and we all know that as living human beings, we are faced with so many stresses and barriers while living. Just as Socrates stated, is life worth living with a body that is completely in bad condition? We are afraid of welcoming death in observation of how everyone else will feel or look at us. Or is it that we all don't understand it's just as well as we have a birth date, we have a death date as well? Death should always be welcomed as a celebration of life and not as a loss. Just as Corinthians 5:8 discusses, we are confident, I say, and willing rather to be absent from the body and be present with the Lord. Should we not welcome such a glorifying beginning? Thank you.
All right, so we'll have a closing remarks from our negative rebuttal, Ms. Harrelson, and then we'll follow with the affirmative rebuttal closing.
In the words of P.J. Harvey, never settle for less than you want. If death is not what one is after, there is no obligation to grasp it by the hand. Do you tell the patient in the hospital bed who has chosen to battle years for their life to accept death? How do you tell the single father that his children will be fine without him? I do say that we should indeed be aware of death and its possibility, but to welcome it is not an equal. There once was a young woman that experienced a very tough birth of her son. She explained, It was just me in there fighting for my life. She continued on saying, I was doing my best to fight to stay alive. At this moment, the woman recalled that she could not breathe. She laid on the hospital table, using all of her last strength and air to get the attention of her doctor. This saved her. Had this young woman accepted her near fate of death, there is no way to tell what would have come for her or for the life of her son. She used this painful, near-death experience and instead of accepting it, fought for her remaining space in the present world on earth. In Trial and Death of Socrates, Crito said to Socrates, I think you are betraying your sons by going away and leaving them, when you could bring them up and educate them. You thus show no regard for what their fate may be. He carried on later stating, you seem to have chosen the easiest path, whereas one should choose the path a good and courageous man would choose. The woman who fought for her life during childbirth, while laying on her deathbed, chose the courageous path. Crito felt that the events that Socrates experienced were due to his cowardice. Could one not say that he indeed was choosing the way out in fear of what was yet to come if he remained alive? When one experiences immense distress in life, it is common to feel that death is at a needed and greeted time. It is when one feels that no more good shall come that they believe death is the way. Stephanie Myers once said, death is peaceful, life is harder. One should refrain from cowering to the ease of death, but gain the strength and courage to remain alive. Thank you.
In conclusion, just as the affirmative opening speaker stated, there is no need to be afraid, worried, sad, or anxious about death, as it will surely happen to each and every one of us. With the current unforeseen situations of today, one has to be more afraid to live than to die. Yes, our human nature is to be selfish and sad when we feel like a loved one is being taken away, but none of us are yet thinking about the stress-free life that they are being welcomed into. Death is a reality, and it does not come with an opinion, an observation, or a suggestion. It's an actuality. One should live a fearless life, not worried about the sight of death. But one should also be just as welcoming to the resolution of life as they were to the origination of one's life as well. Every life cycle must grow and mature, but at some point that life cycle will come to an end. We all know that always does not last forever, and forever does not last always. Thank you.